Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Jackson Holliday, who was just called up about 10 minutes ago. So it's great timing. On top of that, the really dramatic rise in pitcher injuries and how that may help lead to a lockout after the CBA is finished in 2026 and what that might mean for your cards. So we have a small group here today. It's me, Scott, Phil, and Ty, just the three of us. The Blabbin' About Slabbin' folks, Jeff and Chris, are not able to make it tonight, but we are happy to chat sports cards with you. So it's good to see you both. What do you think of Jackson Holliday getting the call to the big leagues on April 9th? What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, earlier than we expected. They could have held out for longer if they really wanted that extra year of control. They could have held out even longer than that if they wanted to wait till the Super 2 deadline, which tends to be in early June. But, I mean, the Orioles, they've got a shot at the division. And I think all their fans are like, what are you doing? Their team, the Norfolk, it's a AAA affiliate, like absolutely killing it. They put up like football game numbers the other day, like 25, 26 runs. Heston Kjerstad, or however you pronounce his name, he had like 10 RBI in that game. So Jackson Holliday was like the third best. Connor Norby, Holliday was like the third best contributor. But if you look at his numbers now, he's at over 1,000 OPS. I mean, that plate discipline is showing out again. 12 walks and only 8 strikeouts in 42 at-bats, 2 bombs. In spring training, he was exposed a little bit. So if you look at the K-to-walk ratio, it didn't really look great in his favor. So as a guy that holds his cards, I was actually like, all right, I could use a little bit of lead-up time for his debut instead of like being forced to sell everything now. So I kind of like that. And, they get incentives. Wyatt Langford, he's been doing okay. Average is probably mid-200s, and he's been hitting a lot of singles and not much else. So maybe they're like, all right, our boy has a chance to easily win Rookie of the Year still. So they called him up earlier than I think a lot of people anticipated, given that he didn't make the opening day roster. So, the first thing that I thought when Scott told us the news offline was that, Ramon Urias is probably doing horrible. That's probably why they did it. And then Scott had shared that he's got a negative 50 or so OPS plus. So the great thing about these advanced stats guys is the actuality of their performance is it's much more of like a shock factor when you see those advanced stats, because you're like, 0.59 batting average. Like, yeah, but it's a small sample size. Then you see the negative 47 OPS plus. And as we talked about in a recent episode, like that doesn't usually happen, because when you have a 10 OPS plus, that means you're 90% worse than the average player in the league. So how could you go negative? I don't know, but it happens. And negative 47 OPS plus for Ramon Urias.
So I want you to look at this AAA team for the Baltimore Orioles. They have 6 players. The first 6 players in the batting order have over 1,000 OPS. They're going to be good for a very long time. I don't know who's in charge of their player development and drafting in Baltimore, but kudos to you, because you just built a dynasty potentially. So
best in class for hitter development for sure, and scouting.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ty, what do you think about this all?
Well, so I had sent that screenshot in our group chat just a few days ago and said, I was looking at the Orioles lineup right now, and then looking at that exact screenshot you just sort of that box score that was crazy, and it was like they need to call up Holliday, get rid of Westberg, and then bring up Kobe Mayo, like Phil was saying, get rid of Ramon Urias. They've got Connor Norby, who they can bring up, throw him in the outfield, put Kjerstad in the outfield. And all of a sudden their lineup is Rutschman, Mountcastle, Holliday, Mayo, Henderson, Norby, Cedric Mullins, who's fine, Kjerstad. Like, wow. Just get them up. Bring them all up this week. That's what I say. So I was pretty excited when we were getting ready to hit record. And you saw that Jeff Passan note, because I think that's good for baseball. I think it's good for baseball cards right now when there's been a lot of buzzkill things recently. Holliday's an interesting one though to me. Like, once he's up, let's say he keeps doing what he's been doing, but not quite to the extreme that he's been absolutely crushing the minor leagues. But let's say he plays really solid with his game and what we know about it. How sexy is that game to people? Like, do you guys think that it has staying power? Does his he's not a big power guy. What's the prospect of his actual long-term value? I mean, I look at a guy like Mookie, and we are always talking about how he's still underappreciated by the hobby.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say was Mookie, but Mookie's leaning into power. I think Holliday will get future, right? I think that same type of approach will happen. But those young years for those type of athletic players like Holiday for like WAR and like career stats are really important. So I think staying power is going to be great. But you might see a few years where he cools off in regards to hobby, assuming he's like as good as Mookie was, just like Mookie was, even when he won his MVP at like age 25 or 26, didn't have a ton of value compared to other similar players. But I think he will have staying power. I think there's been a lot of hype around him, and we've seen hype help a lot of players recently, like just Vlad off the top of my head. He has not performed that well in the big leagues outside of 2021. He's been above average first baseman, great, right, and third baseman, but the hype has really helped people really continuously want his cards, and I think that could happen. But Phil, do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't know if Jackson Holliday is going to reach his full potential this year, never mind power potential. I think a lot of people know that it's gonna take a while for him to grow into that power. I don't know what that means for his hobby. I guess it's what else can he do around that, right? Can he still put up a 6 WAR season? There's so much baked in already, so it's a dangerous slope to be skiing on, I guess. But with Holiday, I think of Wander Franco a little bit. All jokes aside, Wander Franco maybe a little bit better of a hit tool, a higher pedigree from that regard. Jackson Holliday, though, he's bringing the on base percentage. Wander Franco clearly didn't strike out a lot, but didn't walk a lot either, which didn't help his the advanced stats, the OPS, all that stuff. So shortstop can do a little bit of everything, and appears like he'll be a pretty good defender now because Urias was sent down, right? Or was he sent down as part of this?
They haven't announced the transaction yet.
Because it'll be interesting to see how much shortstop he plays. I know he was being tested out at second base quite a bit in spring training. So
talked about it a lot.
Yeah, playing short would be a big boost to his value, assuming that he can hold his own, isn't making a ton of errors. So I mean, Teapot, you're mentioning a bunch of guys that Baltimore has waiting the wings. Colton Cowser, though, did make the opening day squad, and he hasn't been playing a lot. Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander. I mean, they've got a logjam in the outfield there, and he actually played today, Red Sox home opener at Fenway, and he had a bunch of extra base hits, like didn't really do anything. Now, all of a sudden, he's got a 1171 OPS after today's game, just 15 at-bats. So that's another guy they need to find room for.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good problem to have.
Yeah. Do you guys think that if Holiday comes up and does play well, let's say he comes up and he just kills it his first 2 weeks, comes out hitting like 470 and it is just looking really good. If he goes on to have like a really solid season, do you think some of the other guys that, had big names behind them, Volpe and some of these other guys, I mean, Yankees maybe are a bad comparison, but Evan Carter, others, like, did some of those guys start to automatically fall off? I feel like we see this every year. Like, there's guys that are big hype. We're really excited. Sometimes they even play well or look halfway decent. And then the next big prospect comes up, and all of a sudden it's like, who's that guy? Who were we talking about a few years ago? Does Holiday pose that risk to some of these other, rookies like 2023, Ellie, any of the other people?
He could pose a risk to his own teammates with Gunnar and Adley, to be honest with you. I think both of those players have collectors after them. But if he's able to come up and live up to expectations, which are very lofty, so it'll be a challenge, I do think he can take some shine from those two in particular. Because I don't know about Adley's stats. I know Gunnar started a little bit slow so far, but that happened last year too, and he had a great season. So probably nothing to be too concerned about yet. But I do think that will happen. And I think this crop of players is going to start pushing out some of the 2018 to 2020 guys now. And then we're going to see that continue a little bit more. Like Jordan is viewed more as a veteran, same with Soto and even Acuna, right? And so they're less sexy to a lot of people. And people who enter the hobby, they'll want the newest prospects. You can't help yourself. So I do think that'll happen.
What about Bichette? I think he's kind of like fading.
He is. He already is, I think, unfortunately. And I like Bo Bichette a lot. And I like even Vlad a lot, but they're both fading. And that's just what happens. And they're not old. That's the crazy thing. There's hobby old in regards to when they debuted.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things here. There's like the prospects that are still prospects, or the players that are still super volatile, the Volpes, the Jordan Walkers, Evan
Yeah.
Carter is a guy that, I mean, he exceeded his expectations last year, very much so. And his prices after call up probably went up about 15%. They didn't double, right? And this is a guy that wasn't expected to be as good as he showed last year. I know this year he's had some struggles, but the speed outperformed, the batting average outperformed, and the power outperformed, and he outperformed in the playoffs too. And I mean, it just kind of shows you, like, if you're not the guy with the top pedigree, and if you're not, it's easier for Evan Carter to fall in other guys' shadows. Like if Jason Dominguez had stayed healthy throughout all of September last year, like I feel like that would have hurt Evan Carter because he would have been in his shadow for at least September, not October, of course. But that's a different point, I guess. And then you've got, as what you're saying, Teapot, like the veterans, the guys that people are trying to get out of. These cards are trying to find their permanent homes at this point, and the speculators are trying to slowly sell the rest of what they have. They've already started to sell guys like Vlad, Pete Alonso, and Bichette from that 2020 year. Even Acuna. There's not too many speculators still in him. Well, I mean, there must be, but you know what I mean? People are slowly rotating out of that and trying to get into the new shiny toys. And, at some point, there's going to be people that get burnt. And I know we say it over and over, and people are going to learn their lesson, and they don't. And they keep on propping up prices of these new prospects that aren't yet stars. But at some point, there are shifts, and those might be in the offseason into the safe guys and less into the guys that they got burnt on. But more goes into the prospects too, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah. A lot of Jackson Churrio's cards, like his most liquid cards, are down 10 to 40% in the last month. And he's playing pretty well so far. So it'll be interesting to see if like Holiday getting called up, I don't know, it's going to be like the shadow over the top of him too.
I'm not a huge prospector, and that's obviously clear if you listen to this show. But Phil times things well, and he has dabbled with prospects, and so do Jeff and Chris, I believe. But there's times I'm talking to Phil where a player will get called up early, and Phil's kind of annoyed because it's too quick to capitalize as much as you would like. And I don't think that's the case here, but it does happen. It just shows how these type of players are so much different to collect than like established veterans. So
Churrio's I think he's got 2 home runs. I could be wrong.
I'll look him up right now.
He's got 1 or 2. He's got like a 297 average or something like that, I think.
Yeah. So he's doing pretty good.
118 OPS plus, something like that.
Yeah, he has a 116 OPS plus with 2 home runs, 10 hits, 278 batting average, 0.4 WAR. He's been good.
That's about what do you expect? Yeah, it's pretty good.
For a young player, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yeah, 20. It's very young.
So yeah, it's going to be exciting. Nothing is more exciting than these big debuts of players you've waited for. And it's fun. Baseball cards are fun because you kind of feel like you're a part of that player's story when you buy into them before they debut, and you have their cards and you have this actual interest invested into them. It's a lot of fun. So it'll be good to see how he does over the next few days. But I think it's a good place to pivot to something not quite as positive, and that's pitchers' injuries. And I'll just tee this up a little bit. We've seen a lot of players, and obviously Garrett Cole's been out for a little bit, but we recently saw Shane Bieber, Spencer Strider, and who else? Who else have we seen? There's been a few. There's a guy for the Astros. What's his name?
Valdez, Yuri Perez, who it seemed like didn't have structural damage, and he's out. Yeah.
All having Tommy John or out for the long term due to pitching injuries. And there's kind of a battle brewing between the owners and then the Baseball Players Association and all this stuff in regards to, is it the pitch clock? But in my opinion, and I would guess for you too as well, it's probably more correlated with the fact that we're so focused on velocity and spin rate that it's just putting so much stress on people's arms. Pitch clock probably has something to do with it. But we talked about pitchers recently, but what is it even worth buying pitchers cards now from a collecting perspective? Yes, we like collecting pitchers. We might be connected to a specific player for our team, but is there any situation where either of you would buy a pitcher, active or retired? Well, we'll do active or potential pitchers right now to invest in.
I mean, the use cases are pretty rare, where there's actually more upside or enough upside to justify the downside, or a better way to say it is like the risk to return proposition makes sense. Like you could have in the off season picked up pretty low cost, like second tier. Well, now they're first tier because they're the only guys standing. Cards of like, I don't know, Cole Reagans or Tariq Skubal or Corbin Burns. You have to pick the guys that didn't get injured in April, which it does seem like a little bit of an anomaly, doesn't it? That so many guys are getting injured now. I think a lot of it is luck. Like you said, Scott, I don't think it's just the pitch clock. I think it's also our obsession with velocity and throwing at near max, doing that with every pitch. And the obsession with spin is interesting because I thought, based on a podcast from The Athletic a few years ago, that it wasn't possible to add spin if you weren't using the sticky stuff. But I think that's not exactly true, because a lot of those guys where their spin rates went down after they banned the sticky stuff, they went right back up, if not right away, the following season. So they found other methods. And if they're doing that naturally, then yeah, that would increase, I think, wear and tear in their elbow, shoulder, etc. So yeah, I mean, I never thought it was a rational move to buy Spencer Strider per se, especially recently, but I figured maybe because he's the only interesting pitcher in the game, if he just stays healthy for one damn season, he just had one Tommy John, I don't know, 3-4 years ago or something. He better not have his second, because having a second before you're like 25, 26, like that's pretty bad. A lot of guys, like you can't really expect much from them afterwards. We'll see DeGrom also, like how he returns later this year. I hope it turns out to be a situation like 30, 40 years ago when people had Tommy Johns, right? Like it was a career ender. Maybe that was longer ago. Maybe I'm just old. But like I hope like now your second Tommy John is like your first one 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Where like the second one's not a big deal and these guys can just outgrow it. Because you're going to have guys with their third Tommy John. We've already had a few. You're going to have that be kind of the norm. Like, do you think Strider's not going to have a third by the time he's 35? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I was listening to, it was AJ Przinsky on Foul Territory. And he was talking about how basically you only have like a lifespan on that ligament for like 6 or 7 years. It's kind of one of those things that it gets replaced and it doesn't always stay, right? Like it can wear out kind of like a filling on a cavity. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, if he's 25, let's say he returns in his age 27 season, then yes, by his age, let's say it is 6 years, by his age 33 season, he might need another surgery for that. And so it's brutal. It's brutal to even consider buying any pitchers. Ty, do you have any different thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you guys summed it up pretty well. I think there are a lot of factors going into it. I sent that clip that Justin Verlander had a little, maybe 3-minute.
Yeah,
that's a really after his first like minor league start, he got lit up pretty good. But they were just asking him like, what do you think this is? And there's some stats that the current pace this year, there would be 52 MLB players undergoing Tommy John surgery this year based on current number. And last year there were 31. In the 10 years prior, there was an average of 25 per year. So we're seeing this uptick. And one person speculated, well, the only thing that's changed in the last 2 years concretely is the pitch clock. Maybe that's part of it. But I think as with most things, it's usually not just maybe one factor. I don't think there's just like one thing that happened that's contributing. It's like a perfect storm of a bunch of different things. We've talked before about how, veteran pitchers like Greg Maddux and others are saying they think that these young kids are trying to throw way too hard and specifically trying to throw breaking balls way too young. And so you've got, 10-year-olds throwing curveballs, 12-year-olds throwing sliders. They're messing up with their like growth when they're, going through puberty. And then they just keep doing that. And everybody's goal is to make it to the bigs. Some of them will make it, some won't. And then it's like, as soon as they get here and they arrive and they've got these ridiculous RPMs and, velocity, they just blow out their elbow and then they're done. And so I think the whole thing is really frustrating. You rattled off a few guys. I mean, I think it's actually worth, I've got a list here of naming these guys. You got Cole. Obviously, we know DeGrom is like the one guy we all wish just could have had a career, a full career. Ohtani's not pitching. Sandy Alcantara, Strider, Shane McClanahan, Scherzer, Bieber. Justin Steele went down right after his first start of the season, which was stellar. Kodai Senga's out. Kyle Bradish, Brandon Woodruff, Sonny Gray, Kershaw's still out. And then you get into Perez, Verlander, Eduardo Rodriguez, Robbie Ray, Rasmussen. The list goes on. And Gavin Williams, who's obviously nasty. So there's like a whole bunch of guys. Dustin May can't stay healthy and pitch. It's really frustrating. I wouldn't be speculating on any pitchers. I personally would not be speculating on any pitchers. They're already not the, most sought after position in general. And then on top of it, you just can't count on them being healthy. I like pitching first and foremost about baseball more than anything personally. It's my favorite aspect of the game. And so for me, like going back and collecting, great pitchers and looking for some of their cards and maybe going to, I've got like a Johnny Cueto sitting here and I've got a Cole Hamels, there's still fun that can be had in the hobby with guys who did manage to have a career in a bygone era. But right now, like I'm pretty generally concerned about the entire conundrum of pitching and how the game is changing because of it. So we'll see what happens long term.
So average velocity for pitchers last year, average four-seam fastball velocity was 94.2 miles an hour.
Okay.
That was real quick a few years back. I don't know the exact stat, but like even in the 2000s, like the fastest average Major League Baseball fastball was like 93 miles an hour from one specific player or something crazy like that. Like this was abnormal. And now it's to the point where in order for these kids who are teenagers to get college offers, it's more important to have speed than it is to have control. So they focus so much more on not the art of pitching, like you're saying, Ty, but more on like, okay, well, this kid's touching 87 as a junior in high school. Okay, let's get into the minor leagues. Get to the minor leagues. Okay, this kid's touching 94. And so they're giving these opportunities to these kids who are throwing harder, not the ones who are exactly the best. Like a kid with a 3.4 ERA who is more of like a finesse pitcher versus a kid who has 4.5, throws 100. You're going to have that kid get opportunities. So that's what's incentivized these players to do this, to keep throwing hard, is because they get paid. You see some of these big contracts. And so I don't think it's slowing down. And I did read that a lot of the Tommy Johns, like, yes, they're up in the big leagues. Yes, they are, right? But it's even more up percentage-wise in youth sports, which is insane that we're having these kids kill themselves just because that's what is important to teams, right? That equals wins, but I don't think teams realize they're sacrificing long-term wins for short-term wins. And so it's just kind of brutal. And that hurts sports cards. We all want pitchers to be good. It's such an important part of baseball, 50% essentially. And no one wants their cards because it's just a death sentence to your wallet. So,
yeah.
So I watched the video of Verlander that Teapot shared. And one of the things that he mentioned was like, he didn't start throwing hard until his body was ready for it, right? He wasn't put on like this targeted velocity program at age, 13, 14, just to throw harder, just because the analytics said that it made sense to do so. And I remember from when I was doing fantasy baseball, through my analysis about 20 years ago, there was a stat already. We didn't have much, but there was a stat that was like, if a relief pitcher loses 1 mile per hour on their four-seamer, their ERA will increase by 0.5. If a starting pitcher, if the same thing happens to a starting pitcher, they're not affected as much because they don't rely as much on velocity, and they've got a pitch mix that they can work from, and more deception, etc. And with them, it was like half of the increase, like 0.25 for a 1 mile an hour reduction in fastball velocity. So, the data's out there. And one of the things that Verlander actually recommended, which maybe isn't so crazy, it sounded crazy at first, and I'm like, was to incentivize pitchers to go deeper into games, have the team lose the DH once the starting pitcher comes out, right? So then, it seems counterintuitive because you're going to have these guys throw even more potentially high-stress innings. Like, no. They're going to focus more on actually pitching and navigating than just throwing the ball hard as they possibly can and just make it through the lineup 2 times and just get the pull.
I was surprised he said that, because I would assume the Players Association would be against that, because then it's forcing players to go longer than they should. But it's good to hear Verlander actually disagree with the Players Association. And there was another player on Twitter that was actually bashing what the Players Association. It was Garrett Cole. The Players Association came out and blamed Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball came out and said, "What are you talking about?" It's just like divorced parents, is what Garrett Cole said, because they can't just come to a resolution together to fix a major issue. They just have to have it all get ready for the showdown in 2027 that we're going to have for this next CBA deal. But it's pretty crazy. So speaking of which, I think that's a good place to transition to the lockout. So this last year, last CBA, it was 2021 heading into 2022. And that year, 2022, we had a lot of crazy stuff, right? Was that Aaron Judge and Ohtani's year? Was that 2022, that big, massive year where Judge went nuts? Yes, it was. So we almost missed that, the AL home run record. we almost missed Goldschmidt's MVP season, which helped solidify his Hall of Fame case, because they couldn't agree to a CBA. And at the time with the CBA, they ended up agreeing, but the Players Association, the actual head board, said no. Every single one of them voted no. And the teams, the individual teams voted yes, and that's what got this CBA passed. Well, we've seen now the players with this free agency being really slow, plus the rule changes, because now baseball can basically unilaterally introduce rules like the pitch clock, and the Players Association can't do anything about it. We're going to see that continue to happen. And they're really upset. And there was kind of like a coup with the Players Association, where they tried to overthrow the head negotiator for the Players Association. And so there's just a lot of trouble in paradise for them. And it's interesting to see that this is probably going to lead to a strike. That's kind of what Ken Rosenthal, a lot of other people are saying. There's a really high probability that players realize for everything they want, and in my opinion, they're being really selfish here. And I'm usually pro player, but I'm kind of over it myself. There's a chance after 2026, we have 24, 25, 26, 2027 season may be either delayed or missed, right? Something crazy might happen. And if that's the case, let's talk baseball cards in that situation. It's hard for any of us to really pick sides between billionaires and millionaires, but I want to talk more about the perspective of just the sports cards. Players like Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, who else is that demographic? Manny Machado, Arenado, Goldschmidt. It won't matter as much as players like Acuna and Soto, or let's say everybody else in the Orioles. They're going to miss prime years. What's your thoughts on that potential situation, and how do you navigate that with sports cards? What do you think, Ty?
Say get the deal done. That's my short response, my short attitude. I've never been the most knowledgeable or like the most, let's say, interested in all the negotiations for salary and CBAs and everything. It's because to me it does almost give me that gross like divorced parents mediation like feeling. I don't want to deal with this. Like, just, it's sports. I want to watch these sports. I want to watch these guys thrive and grow their careers, and I want to watch my card portfolio hopefully go up. But yeah, I mean, you cringe at that. You definitely cringe at that, and I think you're right. The younger guys would be the most impacted. There's for sure years when guys hit their prime, and if they miss those, you laid out that perfect scenario. It's like, look at all these things, and I mean, you could go back to every year for in time and just look at what we would have missed in any given year if guys hadn't played. Even go back to the shortened COVID season and just kind of go, man, that was weird, right? Like, some of the guys just had like a really good short season, others really struggled. Does the World Series count? All of those kinds of things. So I think it would stink. I don't like to think about it, so I'm glad you'll keep me up to date on it.
Yeah, whether you like it or not. Phil, what do you think?
Whether I like it or not.
We're no strangers to greed because we take part in the sports card hobby. And, I don't know, is there more greed in the hobby itself or with the owners and the teams and the players and everything and real baseball? I don't know. SEV Sports Cards brought up over the last few weeks in one of his episodes. I think we all thought it was kind of crazy if any of you guys heard it too, but one of his takes was that women's college basketball is more popular in this country than Major League Baseball. Well, if the Ohtani gambling scandal / allegations plays out a certain way, plus this lockout happens, he might be onto something. And I guess this is a depressing topic following another depressing topic with the pitcher thing. So let's just move on.
But they go hand in hand, though, because I think this pitcher thing is giving the union the ability to say this is all Major League Baseball's fault. They don't care about player protection. All of it is kind of just boiling down to it, unfortunately. So something I want to run past you guys. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the next few years. Like Ty said, hopefully they can just be civil, but it doesn't seem like that's ever the case with these big unions and Major League Baseball. So, Okay, so I have one more thing for this episode, and it's a would you rather. So my would you rather for you both is going to be in regards to Michael Harris Jr. Michael Harris is one of those players that I think actually is kind of going, I don't want to say it's under the radar because I don't really collect his cards. And we have a resident expert in Braves cards with Chris, and he says he hasn't bought them because they're too expensive in his eyes. So maybe they're not cheap, and maybe I'm just stupid. But I don't want to say that. People will agree that I'm stupid. So let's edit that. So I'll say,
maybe I'm just sitting down.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just cheap, or maybe I'm just not as informed on his cards, but I do want to show these two cards, and I want to see which would you rather purchase and why.
Oh,
So the very first one is going to be a Michael Harris. This is a orange Bowman Chrome autograph for $4,000. It is a beautiful autograph, very bold. It's a good card, right? Very straightforward. One of his best cards in existence, true orange. The other one is his Dynasty RPA 1/1. And this might surprise you because he, unlike Adley and unlike Gunner, only has one card. This is his one Dynasty 1/1. This is it. This is the 1/1. And it's a weak patch. You can tell they didn't go all in on Michael Harris for this set. So now that's a different situation to me versus when they have 9 or 10 or 15 of each individual player, different 1/1s. At this price, I think there is an interesting discussion about which would you rather have. This card, $700, or this card itself, an orange Bowman Chrome autograph. Ty, what do you think? I think I know your answer, but I want to see if you have any other thoughts about it. I don't want to say that either. I'm going to, sorry, Phil, another edit. I don't want to make it sound like Ty. I know all. So Ty, I know you're a big Dynasty fan, but what do you think about this particular situation?
This is a great comparison. Thank you to whoever sent this in.
Yeah, thank you. Someone sent this in to me on Instagram, which is why
yeah, this is my guy Grizz from Cards HQ we were talking about that Michael Harris too. So I would go with the Dynasty. I'm going to stand by my assertion from a few weeks ago, and it's the 1/1. And I would say, especially for the reason you laid out, Scott, that he's only got one card on the checklist. So he's got to 10 to 5 to 1. That's it. He's got a dual auto with somebody else on the checklist too. I can't remember who.
Does it have a rookie logo? I don't think it does.
No, I don't think so.
Because of that, like,
yeah, I don't think so. So I mean, it's just that one. Look, the Bowman orange, great card. But I think Dynasty stands to climb still more over time. I wouldn't say they didn't. The patch isn't great. It's not a great super chunky patch. It doesn't have, something super compelling on it. It still looks nice. And it is game used, as we clarified many times. So I'm going to go with the Dynasty because I think those stand to go up over time. And I mean, you're still saving $700 on the difference too.
Phil, what do you think?
So I am a fan of Dynasty. I'm pretty neutral with Dynasty. I think of the 5 folks on the crew, I'm probably the most neutral. It's almost like looking at the, all the different television programs out there. There's not really a neutral one. Well, I'd be a neutral one with Dynasty with regards to political affiliations and stuff. But this is a tough one for me. So with Juan Soto in 2018, who had 3 images for his 1/1, his 1/1, I know this because the private sale, a friend of mine was involved in it. It at the time sold for right around what a gold Bowman Chrome auto would go for with Soto. Now 3 images versus 1, and you've got the orange here instead of the gold. So it's pretty close. With Michael Harris, a lot of people don't realize this, but like Soto, with his Bowman Chrome autograph, did not have any non-autos, which makes the auto a little bit more special. I'm just going to go with a safe thing because this card here, you pointed it out, Scott, not a fan of the patch. It's not terrible. It's multicolor, but it looks kind of stupid for a 1/1 in my opinion. And also the autograph is a little streaky. Too streaky for my liking. I like those 10 autos. It's probably not going to get a 10 auto if you were to send it a PSA. So I'm going to go with the orange, but it's very, very close.
It is close. And I want to point out too, I do like Dynasty. I think it's a great set. Like, I have no issues with it. I'm just upset more with Topps with how they've handled high-end rookies more than me not liking Dynasty. So if Dynasty's the set, that's great. I just hope they can make it better by maybe having the same image or something. But in this particular case, if they were the same price, I'd go with the orange, but this card shouldn't be cheaper. And the one thing you do have with this card is the competition of other rookies. And this is a very unfortunate autograph, but it's still a very important card for him. The one thing I'll say is the orange is an orange, and it's just easier to sell. More people know about it. I bet if people knew this was the only 1/1, there's just so much explaining you need to do for this card. So in a private sale or buy it now, I think you do really well with this card. compared to the orange. So if for this price, I'd probably actually take this dynasty. In this
Will you go to the orange, back to the orange real quick?
Yes, I'll go back to it.
Because looks like he's gotten a little bit shorter on his auto in general too. Like on the newer dynasty, like he's just, it's kind of like a squiggle now.
Yeah.
I do like that he's like Michael Harris squared.
Yeah, it's kind of cool
too, on both of them. But yeah,
I do wish this was a better image. Not the best image I've ever seen for a dynasty. It's fine, just a regular silhouette photo.
Yeah, it's true that there's a few things that they've done much better on a lot of other dynasty cards than this one. But I don't know. I still dig it.
It's a very interesting situation. Okay, Ty, I think you had a would you rather?
I do. I have a fun one. Let me share my screen. So Chris was actually at Cards HQ today, and we got to hang out with him for a little while, and he ripped a box of 2014 Topps Update, which was fun. And we were looking at the Braves section, and there were two cards right next to each other. So I'm going to show you what those cards were. Both were listed. They were raw, $120, same exact price. Okay, so this is the first card, Vaughn Grissom, who we know was part of the trade for Chris Sale. They shipped him up to Boston. This is his gold wave rookie, Topps Chrome rookie auto on card, numbered to 50. This was listed for $120 raw in the shop. And the second card was somebody who every Braves fan, I think, still loves, in spite of him having kind of been forced to leave. They didn't really want to give him the money. Dansby Swanson, hometown guy. This is his True Gold rookie auto, Topps Chrome, also obviously numbered to 50. Both were listed for $120. And I asked Chris, which one of these cards will be more valuable at the end of this season? So that was kind of the premise of the would you rather. I feel like it's pretty straightforward, but I'd like your thoughts on it.
Did Chris give his thoughts? So you can save it for the end, but did he give his thoughts?
He did.
Okay. So Chris loves Vaughn Grissom. At least he did.
He feels bittersweet about the departure of Vaughn Grissom. He does.
I still think that that's going to be a great trade for the Braves, for Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom, essentially. And plus, the Braves aren't even paying him his full price on his contract. And then did they extend him? They might have even extended him, if I'm not mistaken. They might have done something like that. But the gold wave sucks that it's a wave versus a true gold. But you got to take the Vaughn Grissom. If he can come into Boston and just be good for half a season, which is totally doable. He's only 23 years old. There's a really great opportunity. Dansby's a 30-year-old shortstop for the Cubs, second team. It's tough if he was on the Braves still, he might have like Braves fans who love him.
Yeah.
But for me, I got to take that Vaughn Grissom and just roll the dice a little bit.
Phil, what say you?
I guess so. You know, if you evaluate companies, you want to look at not just like growth potential, but also fundamentals. If you're buying stocks, and you'd have a hard time justifying Vaughn Grissom looking at the fundamentals. Like if I had to pick one of these two cards that I knew I was going to be stuck with 3 years from now, I'd have to take the Dansby Swanson.
Definitely. Yes.
I mean, if you count blabbing about Slabin, maybe they'll do this. Count the number of gold refractor autographs that one has versus the other, and that's going to be a special card for Swanson, a guy that had a 740 or so OPS last year, that had a breakout year the year before. Tends to be. Is he a fan favorite for the Cubs? It helped that he had his breakout year the first season with them. I have no faith that the Red Sox win this trade. Chris Sale, though, is in probably, I was just trying to look up the honeymoon period after the Tommy John. There's like a certain number of years that you can go through, and the risk of re-injuring that elbow is significantly lower, but you could injure other things. I don't know.
You gotta speak these things, Phil. Just stop. Just stop saying it.
Yeah.
We've seen enough carnage. Chris Sale's going to be fine. He's going to be
Scott already jinxed him by saying that. Oh, they probably went. Yeah,
I believe
right
it
now. Yeah, I don't know Vaughn Grissom. I don't know if he can play. Is he going to be playing? Well, now Story's out. So can he play shortstop well?
There's articles saying that he's going to get time at shortstop.
With 27 errors.
That could be a disaster.
That could be a disaster, but it also could be great if he becomes a average defensive shortstop and has a great year. Someone might buy into the hype. That's what you got. You got to bank on it if you're having a 1-year flip, right? But both of them aren't who I would want. But I like that idea.
He's had a memorable moment already. Didn't he have the last out via strikeout in Game 5 of the NLDS?
Yeah, he did. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Had like no at bats for a long time and then goes up and strikes out.
It's like his only at bat all series. Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, that was pretty much. I mean, Chris, it was pretty straightforward. It was just fun seeing those two cards next to each other at the same exact price and saying like, this is kind of a tale of two stories. If you could, what Chris said is, well, first I reminded him of Christian Pache and said like everybody was high on that guy too, and he hasn't panned out. So Grissom, we'll see what happens with him. It's a floor versus ceiling thing, between the two. But he did point out, Chris did, that if you could go to Von Grissom and say, I'll wave a magic wand and you will have the same career that Dansby Swanson's had through this point in his career, he'd be like, deal, right? Like he had his growing pains early. He obviously didn't live up to the hype early, but he went on and had a World Series and, played well. And is still, who knows, still has some career ahead of him. So I'm kind of in the same boat.
He's made $200 million in his career. Any player would take that.
Yeah. So I'm rooting for Grissom. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. But if it's this season, I'd take Grissom. If it's long term, I'd take the Dansby and then sell it immediately.
Agreed. Agreed. I have one more question. This episode's getting long, so we'll make this quick. I want to talk about Jackson Holliday to make this a big old beginning and end of Jackson Holliday. I want to show you Matt Holliday's numbers, and we can say, do we think he's going to be better than his father? Because his father was a very good baseball player.
He sure was.
Let me make this bigger for everybody so you can see it. But Matt Holliday had 44.5 baseball reference WAR, a 132 OPS plus, an 889 OPS, a 299 career batting average, of 300 home runs. He has a batting title, MVP runner-up. He has at least how many MVP votes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 MVP caliber seasons. You could say got MVP votes. Do we really think because Matt Holliday's cards aren't worth anything. And they're not worth a lot, right? There might be Matt Holliday collectors, and that's great. If he would have debuted at his son's age, those 3-4 extra years right here, they could have given him 15 more WAR. And we're looking at a 60 WAR player potentially. Mm-hmm. But do we think that Jackson Holliday is going to even be better than his father? Because this is one of the top 3% of baseball careers all time if you look at wins above replacement as a metric. So it's just interesting to think, if this is what his career is, it's great. But what about the cards?
Yes.
Maybe I didn't read that well. Do you think he'll be better? His career numbers will be better than this?
I think he'll be better because I'm the guy that also said that Juan Franco was going to be a Hall of Famer. And I'm usually wrong. But Matt Holliday didn't have Matt Holliday. So the benefit, they share the hereditary advantage of having really great genes. But Holliday is known to be a hitting guru and a great mentor and coach, I think. And hopefully that's rubbing off onto the other kid too. Maybe he'll be the best. Ethan, is that his name? So Jackson doesn't have the frame right now. I'm sure a lot of people watching did see the video of all of them, the entire family doing batting practice. And Matt Holliday still has the most power out of all of them. If Jackson can grow into some of that within the next 3 to 4 years, I think it's Jackson. And I think the shortstop advantage will help. So we were showing Matt Holliday's numbers. He spent some, not all, probably not even half his career in Colorado. And that's already adjusting the OPS plus. Oh, I'm seeing guys flex and I'm distracted.
I'm just saying this is what Jackson's going to grow into right here.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see. But 132 OPS plus doesn't seem to match the batting average, some of those other numbers, because one is, inflated by cores and then the other was not. So do I think that Jackson Holliday can have an OPS plus above 130? That's going to be tough, but I think he'll make up for it with the defense and maybe with the base running. And I think he's a tick above Matt Holliday once he retires.
Interesting note. Matt Holliday played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years for Colorado. And he played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 outside of Colorado. So he had a long time with the Cardinals. I know he likes the Cardinals a lot. So, all right. Well, that's a good place to end this. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let us in the comments down below if you agreed with our Would You Rathers. Let us know what you think about our baseball opinions, and we'll see you in the next video.